Welcome to the podcast where your next favorite story is already written in the stars.
We're your new book besties, April.
And Tay, here to get your book cravings started and satisfied.
Why? Because around here, it's
It's faded.
faded.
So grab your current read and make a cozy drink. Hide your TBR list because today we're talking about our favorite tropes and the one book that changed everything for us.
Now, before we dive in, here's a little bit about us. We didn't just start a podcast. We started as two girls who couldn't stop talking about our love of books and Taylor Swift. Plus, it helps when you become friends with your boss.
Yeah, I hired you. I don't recommend that. Anybody listening right now, it was, all in fate, and that's kind of why we decided to go with this title because I hired April.
Mm.
I immediately knew I was like, oh man, like I'm gonna trap her and make her my friend. We have way too many things in common. This is meant to be. Luckily, she didn't stick around long 'cause she decided to quit on me.
Yes.
Just, which is fine. But then I was like, cool, great. That means I'm not your boss anymore. So now we're really going to hang out. So
Yeah, now we can
sorry.
be friends. Hey, but that's great. I feel like some of the best relationships in your life actually come from the people that you're around. And I think that that's really awesome that it worked out that way. And
Yeah.
thank
I think you
goodness
can make
I
friends as
quit.
an adult. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. It was a benefit for me. And,
Yes.
I will try to be better in the future, but I can't make any promises.
Right. So when I think of kind of like what got our friendship started, I think about talking about the books that we loved. And so I think of our top favorite tropes that we love to read. So, Tay, what are some of your favorite top tropes that you enjoy?
I love me a good billionaire. I love a
Oh,
man with money. There's just something about like making love in a penthouse, miles of
on
everything.
the glasses
Yeah.
surrounding
Yeah.
everything, and magically nobody's looking.
Yeah. Magically, no one's looking. And it's always like over New York, over Seattle, over these like major glamorous cities, and totally giving that effect that we just love. And yeah. So I'm going to definitely recommend if you love billionaires to read The Stopover by T.L. Swan.
Mhm.
Short synopses of this book. Emily Foster and Jameson Miles are on a plane together, all flirty, flirtatious. They end up having a stopover and they shack up. They go, that was really fun. I had a great time. They part ways. A year passes. Emily is now going to work at this company, and who happens to be the CEO? Jameson Miles.
Of course.
Super, super good. This is the first book in the Miles High Club, and I can recommend all of them, but this one definitely sets the tone for the rest of the series, and it's so, so good. So highly recommend, but I love me a good billionaire. What about you, April? Give me a
Mm.
trope of yours.
Billionaires are really good. I recently read In Good Company by Kat Singleton, and that is
Mm.
definitely a billionaire romance that I think was done pretty well. So, yeah, I like that. But I will say I tend to lean more towards forced proximity is probably one of my most
Mm.
favorite tropes. Like you are stuck with this person. Now, it can lead into enemies and lovers, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But forced proximity, you are forced to be around this person for whatever circumstance. And the book that I can think of that I most recently read with forced proximity was The Right Move by Liz Tomforte. So thank you for holding it up. If you are watching, Taylor is so nice to have the book shown there. Beautiful cover. But it has Indy and Ryan is like this big NBA superstar, and Indy is going through a breakup with a different character, which is really great. I also really love when they're leaving a kind of like a toxic situation and finding the person that's meant for them. But she's leaving that relationship and forced to have to move in with her best friend's brother too, which is another micro trope in here for people who really like that trope because I know it's popular. It is, it's so good.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you're forced to live with somebody that you maybe necessarily wouldn't live with normally. So, hands down, so good.
I do love me a good forced proximity. I really do. And it's also
Mhm.
too, it just builds the tension even more. So when they finally have that like collision, it is like just peak. It's like I'm like I have had so many moments like that where I sit there and I squeal when they finally get together, but it's like worth the
Mhm.
wait because of the forced proximity because they're like making like, innuendos at one another and they pass
Yeah.
one another and it's just I love it. It's so good. Thank you. I actually recommended that one to you, so I'm grateful that you included that one. So, so good. I love the Wendy series. Another one I can think of that kind of fits that same category is Grumpy Sunshine. I love me
Mhm.
a good Grumpy Sunshine. I love when the character, which is People could say enemies to lovers, and I do cherish that one, and we'll talk about that one in a second. I think me and you share that one in common. Grumpy Sunshine. I just, when the girl is so positive, or even sometimes when it's reversed, the person is the guy is the sunshine and the girl's grumpy. Like I just love it either direction. I'm gonna recommend Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. Let me tell you, this book is grumpy sunshine to a T. Wells Whitaker and Josephine Boyles. Josephine is like this like happy go lucky, super talented golfer who is trying to save her parents' golf place, which is called the Golden Tee. And she needs the money. Wells is kind of this grumpy at the end of his career golfer, and she's everything that he needs to get him back into the game. So he hires her on as a caddy so she can start earning money to help her parents' golden tea. There's a specific scene in this book, and I'll kind of derail off this because it has to be shared. It is so golden, but she like rolls her ankle and her like foot is like in her shoe and everything. And he's like, we have to check to make sure there's no broken bones or anything. She's like, no, 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 it's fine. She's trying to get him to stop. And he takes her shoe off and painted on her toes, it says Wells, and then he's like literally says his name on on her toenails spelled out. And then he takes off the other shoe and it says Bells, Wells Bells, which is what she calls her fan club for him because she loves him as a golfer. In that moment, he's like, I have never seen anything like this, but I'm so turned on in my life seeing my name on her toes. And y'all know me as a friend. I have a thing. Like I hate feet. I hate feet so much. But reading that in a book made me laugh so hard. I was literally about to pee my pants because it was so funny. I was like, he is so hot and bothered off of this Wells Bell's toes. But it was so cute. Their chemistry is undeniable, but he is so grumpy. She is so sunny. I love it so, so, so much. So that is my recommendation for sure for a grumpy sunshine.
Well, I can't say I've ever read a book where he is turned on by his name being on her toes. So
I
that's the best.
died. It was too good. The first foot, like, it describes perfectly of him taking off the sock, sees the shoe, and then takes off the other one, and then it reads and he's like, I cannot believe she has my name on her toes." And he was just so in love with it. So I
That's
loved
so
it too, though.
great. I love that. Grumpy Sunshine is just like an adorable one. And I think that we tend to see that in a lot of books that
Mhm.
have like a lot of that really fun humor, which makes it a really nice, like when you're feeling like you're having like a little bit of a reading slump to read a Grumpy
Mhm.
Sunshine book is top notch because they're just full of humor, which is always nice. But I know a lot of people are probably going to relate to this. Enemies to Lovers is probably right up there, one of my most top favorite choices of tropes. When I was trying to think of some books, I knew you would have things to say about this book. So the book that I'm holding up for those who aren't watching is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. And I have so many thoughts and feelings about this book, and I know you do too. uh,
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
it is such a good book series too. But in this book, it really kind of revolves around in the beginning about sisterhood. And Amelia is her name, and she has a twin sister, Victoria, and they are witches. Her sister kind of goes missing. And so it becomes this story of like her trying to get back her sister, but she needs the help from a certain person named Wrath, who I don't want to spoil too much about the book because I feel like there's so many things that you find out later on in the series. But they are forced to be together, and it is like tension and yearning to the max. I mean, she really makes you wait for the payoff in these books in order to get to the first time when
No.
they are together.
I was texting you when I was reading this book continuously. I was like, I am on
Yeah.
the edge of my seat, but I'm also so pissed off. I was like,
Yes.
because I loved it. It was so good. It kept me reading. I was very interested in it. But also too the payoff. The payoff was so worth it.
It is. Yeah, she really did a great job of like making you really want it, be super invested in the characters, and the plot of the story too is great. So hands down, probably one of the best enemies to lovers that I have read. Another book though that I feel like would be a crime that I did not mention it is The Book of Azrael. So this one is by Amber V. Nicole. And I know this book is actually super, super popular. Whereas like I feel like Kingdom of the Wicked is like criminally underhyped. This book is
Mhm.
actually, I think, appropriately hyped. So in this one, we have Diana, and she is essentially this creature who is all things bad. She has been made from a human into this creature by the big baddie guy. And she has to meet with this guy named Liam, who is kind of like her exact opposite in everything. They're actually enemies, true enemies. Like their peoples have been killing each other for a very long time. And he's a god. So it's just a really great enemies to lovers book where they are true enemies. Like they try killing each other in the beginning. They are trying to end each other in this book. And it flips and it's like they truly get to know each other and realize that maybe they're not so different, which is probably one of my most favorite things about the enemies to lovers trope.
I want to read that one so bad. You have told me constantly about that book. So that one is going to be definitely next on my TBR, and I'm probably going to bump it above others. I'm sure our listeners here are thinking the same thing when they come across a book and they're like, I just have to read that and I want to read it now. And there was a period of time probably over the last, like, 4 months where I was reading, like, back-to-back fantasy, and I kinda broke it up
Mhm.
with, like, sports romance and other things to kinda throw, something different in between, like, we were talking about needing that grumpy sunshine to kinda just, like, give me a laugh or 2 because sometimes fantasy reads can be so heavy because there's a lot of plot in them, a lot of world building, and that
They
one definitely
thick.
is, like, it sounds so good, though. I love me some good enemies to lovers. I have actually an enemies to lovers rec as well. This is
Ooh.
gonna be A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. So, Holly Renee is definitely more of a contemporary author. This was kind of like her touch into fantasy, and let me tell you, I love it. I love a quick fantasy. I never thought I would, because she kind of briefly touches on the world building, doesn't get too involved into it. But in essence, in this book, we have Everin, who is our main male character. We have Indara. Indara is star blessed. And she goes to get married to the prince. I can't remember his name, so sorry. And Everin is actually his brother. And immediately from the get go, there's a lot of tension and a lot of anger towards one another. There's this whole stipulation of like, don't touch her kind of thing. You can't because
Ooh.
your brother's marrying her kind of thing. And so he finds creative ways with, I will say, a spine of a book to help our female main
Woo!
character. I know it is a good one. It is one of my favorites, but it's also a very quick read. So if you are starting fantasy, this to me is actually a really great lead in for that because she is used to writing contemporary. She's touching into fantasy now. This is a really good starter book if you're wanting to dip your toe into a fantasy world. So, and then you can go on to bigger authors like SJM, who has an entire like 3 different universes of major scale and size, and we can go into that in another day, but definitely great enemies to lovers read, and I think me and April here can agree, like, that is one of our favorites. It is, like, so good. I
Yes.
love when there's just tension and hate, and then you know what that hate turns into.
Holly Renee, I feel like you said is a great
Mhm,
introduction to fantasy because then you have, these books like I was talking about, The Kingdom of the Wicked, which is not too heavy fantasy, but
mhm.
like the Book of Azrael is definitely pretty heavy fantasy for some people. So her books are really short. That series is actually really short. And I think that they are a great intro, like you said. So that is great. And plus, I feel like we can speak to this. Both recently met Holly Renee,
Yeah.
and she was fabulous.
She's a phenomenal human being. She let us FaceTime with a friend of ours who wasn't able to make it, and she just made the experience just one really genuine because then, you enjoy the books, but then you also enjoy the person who wrote them and get to see like a behind the scenes of their true character. And that just
Hmm.
makes you want to buy everything that they have because honestly,
Yes.
if you're going to be ugly nasty, but you write a good book, I kind
Yeah.
of don't want to buy your stuff after that. It just doesn't give me like a good warm fuzzy feeling. And so she gave me
Mhm.
all the feelings. Love her.
It kinda goes along with just authors who are just really, really great. I'm so excited to talk about my next trope. I chose for my 3rd most favorite trope, touch her and you're deleted. I knew immediately when I thought of this, the most perfect book series really for it by Laura Thalassa is her Bewitched series. Now, the 3rd book in the series is coming out, I think in August. I think it got moved to August for the release date, but the very first book in the series is called Bewitched. And this series it's like a light fantasy, I would say, where the main character is a witch. She's a young witch named Celine, and she wants to join this coven of witches, which a coven almost acts as like a college, is kind of what I would compare it to in the series. In order to like get to become a member of this coven, she has to go on like sort of like a magical journey. And she goes to South America and something drags her plane from the sky. Okay, her plane literally crashes. Everyone's worst nightmare, right? She saves them, but in saving them, she comes upon this tomb and opens the tomb. And that is, of course, where we're going to meet Memnon, who is out to get her. It kind of feeds into a little bit of maybe enemies to lovers, but I will say, incredible series and probably one of the best examples I can think of like touch her and you are done. You are off this earth because he does not let anybody touch Celine, only him, which
I
is
mean, the guy was
delicious.
living in a coffin. I wouldn't mess with him
Yes.
either. After just not even knowing his woman, I'd be like, "You scare me, sir." But, like, added with the woman flair when they're like, "Touch her and die," like, he really
Mhm.
means it. He's like, "Sorry."
It is so good, and I feel like that's another
Mm.
series that is criminally underhyped. I personally love out of the series now, there is 2 books out plus a novella, and the novella is probably one of my most favorite books I've ever read. It's so good. Like, Laura Thalassa's writing has really just gotten so good since her Bargainer series. A lot of people will recognize her from that series, but I'm telling you, if you have not picked up Bewitched yet, it's you're missing out.
That I have met her also in person, and she is wonderful. Like, she's one of those authors. It's like, you meet her and then you wanna buy everything because you're so sweet. I thank you for recommending that for our listeners. They need something to look forward to. I honestly, we have so many tropes that we know and love. I will give an honorable mention to one of mine, a one-bed trope. I think we've
Oh.
seen that. I love that when they are like which is kinda like forced proximity in some regards,
Mhm.
but forced proximity to the extreme of, like, in a room, singular bed. They have to share one, and most recently, I read the latest Liz Tamborde, In Her Own League. She is an owner of a baseball team. He is the general manager, and they go on one of the trips to a away game, and her room is too hot, his is too cold, but in his room, he can keep her warm. Need I say less? It's so good.
Together
So
is perfect.
I I love me a good one bed trope. There's a lot of them, but this was the most recent read, actually just finished. So, so good. Give me your honorable mention, AB.
Okay, so my honorable mention is found family, which I feel like is a micro trope in like so many books, especially romantasy books. There's a lot of found family in those. I chose a book that I actually read a long time ago, and that is The Coppersmith Farmhouse by Devney Perry. This is kind of the book that started it all for her, which I think is really great because it is such a incredible story. We have Gigi and her daughter are moving their entire lives to this town in Montana, and there they meet Jess, who is the town sheriff. It's kind of just like this beautiful story of not only her finding love, but also finding like a support system of family in the people that live in that town. Those stories get me because found family, I feel like, especially as adults, you really do find your people. It's
Mhm.
really nice to read stories about people who find their people, who have their backs. And this is such a great example of that. So if you are a
Yeah.
fan of Devney Perry, that is definitely one I feel like most people have read, but it's so good.
I feel like I can really relate to found family too in that
Mhm.
regard of a little bit about me. I'm an only child. And so for me, I didn't have siblings growing up. So for me, it was a lot of relying on, being around my parents who were older and then they were around other older adults and then finding people who kind of related to me on like a sisterly level. And I would say that's what our friendship has morphed into is I really lean on those bonds. I actually April has an older sister who I call most
Yes.
mornings on my way to work. So shout out to
Yes.
Atron. She is the bee's knees. I'm so grateful that I was able to acquire her through April. It was kind of like a legal deal. It was like, if you're going to be my friend, I also have this older sister and she's lonely as well. So we all are friends now. And we just have this 4 trifecta. We have a friend named Mo, and she is honestly one of the like glue of this 4 friendship that we have. And I look forward to our conversations every day. But definitely, they're my found family. You're
For
part of
sure.
that. When I read that in a book, it just makes my heart happy because,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt. I didn't have people I could talk to every day, and now I do. And it's so, so great. Actually, that feels like non-honorable mention worthy. I feel like that needs to be just kicked up to top 4. We won't even in that
The most
category. The
wholesome
best.
friendships. And with that, like, when I think of, like, reading, family is one that I feel like really draws people in because a lot of people do relate to
Mhm.
that, right? But also, like, the books, when I think of, like, the books that got me into reading, a lot of those
Mhm.
had themes of found family. For me, when I know people are like, "I've read my whole life." Well, yes, technically we all have all read
Mhm.
our entire lives, but you think about the books that have just really stuck with you, and I will say, like, I struggled with reading as a kid. I was
Mhm.
not somebody who was a strong reader, but then I found, and I'm talking like little me, found in my horse girl days, Kay, the Black Stallion and Black Beauty books.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a horse girl, okay? But I will tell you, those books got me so into reading. I literally own probably 4 different copies of Black Beauty, okay, on my shelf, proudly displayed. Everybody come and look at them. They're beautiful. It's a beautiful story of found horse family.
Family.
It's seriously, it's the books like that that draw you
Yeah.
in and get you reading, and then you start to discover other things. So then it was like after I got into reading, my horse books, I found Tamora Pierce, and she
Mhm.
wrote The Song of the Lioness, which I feel like is also criminally underhyped. It was my first taste of like true kind of fantasy books, but
Mhm.
it's about this girl who goes out and she's kind of like the savior, the chosen one trope. Those books were fabulous. And then, I got a little bit older and we had Goose Girl by Shannon Hale, which was a retelling, which makes me think, oh, that's probably why I really like ACOTAR these days, is because of the retelling story.
Yeah.
So, and I know what you're going to talk about. The
You
book to end it all that changed
yeah.
everything for everybody. Twilight.
I mean, I will tell you, there was some type of crack that Stephanie Meyer just added to those books that just, like,
Yes.
as a 12, 13-year-old person reading that was just completely life-changing, and I mean, I was kinda along the same lines as you, like, I read my whole life. I probably took a gap for a while of thinking books were, like, in a not cool phase. Then my dad, who is ultimately a huge reader as well, was like, "Really, you should get back into reading." And I honestly, I found it as, like, an outlet because there was a lot of times when things weren't so good on the exterior, but I found I could lose myself if I read, and I could just build this whole world in my mind. Stephanie Meyer in her Twilight books was, like, my first, like, true yearning in a book, and
Mhm.
how I don't even think that they kiss until, like, book 2, maybe 3, and I didn't realize that till years later. I'm reading
Yeah.
these books and I couldn't, like, but then as an adult, I'm rereading it and I'm like, "They didn't even kiss? They're just, like, holding
Yep.
hands and, like, looking at one another?" But this whole time, I could have believed that they kissed on page 1, like, be
Right.
because of how involved I was when I read them when I was, like, 12 and 13, and they were such I remember going to midnight releases of the movies. I remember lining up
Ugh.
at Hot Topic to meet Taylor Lautner. I was invested. Like, in my mind, I was like, "He's gonna see me and fall in love," which I kinda did manifest that he did marry someone named Tay because
Manifested that.
Taylor also married another Taylor. Shout out to them because they seemed
Right?
great, but I was like, "He's gonna see this Taylor and love me." That did not go down. He was like, "I'm gonna sign your thing. Hello, nice to meet you. Goodbye." I replayed that over and over again. I was like, "We're in love." He
It is
doesn't know it.
everything.
But that was, like, the first Kickstarter, and then after that, I was hooked. I was reading books like Evermore, which I cannot at the top of my head remember the character names, and I remember there was something about him giving her red tulips and they met in dying love, so I had red tulips all over my room growing up because I was like, "I'm her. It's me." Like, I was so invested in fantasy romance at such an early age that it just morphed into this beautiful thing as an adult, and I just love it so, so much. Definitely, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Stephanie. I'll give her the tip of the hat, all the things. She really knew how to capture a reader and an author, and then, of course, there's other authors along the way who kinda ping-ponged off of her. E.L. James was a huge one. She kinda took a
Yes.
spin on that and turned it into something dark and kinky, and go her, because there was so
Yep.
many older women, I think, in that turn of phrase that needed that. They were, like,
Yes.
rediscovering their sexuality, and it was, "It's okay to like these things. It's okay to read these things. It's okay to be and then after that, it kinda paved the way for all these other authors to be like, "I can write about this stuff too? Oh, I'm
Truly.
gonna do that. I'm gonna, like, release all the books and do all the things," and just I'm so grateful to all of them that kinda paved the way for what we have now of just smut galore.
Right, the best. I know Twilight kinda gets a bad rap,
Mhm.
and I will say, I also was a huge Twilight girl in my teenage years. I would say, like, she really did. She opened a lot of doors and got a lot of people reading, and to me,
Mhm.
that's just, like, a wonderful thing, regardless on if it's, like, the best piece of literary work that
It's
anybody has ever read, which, let's be honest, okay, we know it's not.
yeah.
However, it will forever hold a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
I'm scared to go back and read it as an adult because I feel like I would pick up on things now where I'm like, that is not a healthy relationship. But for me at the time, my
Yeah.
little teenage heart was like, this is so romantic. Which, if there's any younger girls listening, please know that was not a romantic relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
But it opened the doors to so many
It
more
did.
authors to be able to come out and release some incredible books. That's just the best. That's just the best.
My books, we and April were talking about this before we started recording, but my 4 Twilight books are so worn out that the, like, spines are falling off. Like, they are, like, just have been held so many times because I just reread it over and over again. I couldn't stop. I couldn't, like, get it out of my head, and I just something about the buildup was so worth it. It is not a great literary piece by any means, but it is holding that place forever in,
Yes.
like, it kickstarted the love back, and the love is here to stay. I hope I develop that same, like, continuation for my kiddos so they can sit there and go, "You know what?" Like, because I have some of those memories with my dad. We were sitting there reading A Wrinkle in Time, Ender's Game together, and, like, my dad had a big thing. He was like 1 or 2 chapters a night, that's it. I would beg sometimes, "Please,
Mhm.
like, let's read the next chapter. I wanna know what happens." Nope, I have to wait till tomorrow night. It just kept me so invested as a kid, and I wanna develop those same relationships with my daughter, and then, when she's old
Yes.
enough, she can enjoy the other type of books I like to read,
After
and
dark versions.
the after dark versions, but in the interim, it's just so fun, I think, to watch probably your kid develop that, like, just now kinda turning that. I'm sure he probably loves that I love reading.
Shout out to all the romance authors out there who are
Mhm.
doing the work. And it's so exciting because I feel like for a long time, like romance books were kind of like, why are you reading that? Like there was like a certain stigma that came with that if you were reading those books. But I
Mhm.
feel like recently, like I went to Walmart the other day and their shelves are filled with nothing but romance novels and of all different kinds, all different, genres and tropes and things like that of the whole romance umbrella, and I just think that that's really great that we're seeing this rebirth of it and in a positive light too, where it's not so much a judgment anymore.
Yeah, it's awakening femininity in our bodies that's just like, we get to be out there loud and proud displaying our books. I
Yes.
remember my grandmother's books of her Fabio covers were like in her
Ugh.
closet. She didn't keep them out loud and proud. When I'd find them, my grandpa was like, "Oh my gosh, put those books away." I just was like, thinking about that later, and now she had to hide what she enjoyed because there was, like, a stigma built with, "You can't show that. Women aren't sexual. We don't talk
Mhm.
about these things." So I'm super grateful that they kinda, like, paved the way to now where we can
Yeah.
display them loud and proud. We can be proud to be a woman and get to read the things that we do. Shout out, I was telling April, my shirt, "Women in STEM, baby." We just went to the moon and around the moon and we're
NASA.
back. So had to wear this today. It's so prevalent for what's going on, and we just need that. We need
We
people
do.
being excited about stuff, being excited about reading, being excited about women going to space. These aren't things that happen every day, but we need it to because it's awesome. That's my rant.
All right, besties. That is it for today's episode.
Make sure to follow, download, and share our podcast socials with your other book besties. We would love to hear your favorite tropes and book recs as well. Please leave a comment on your favorite platform letting us know.
And join us next week where we will talk about book releases that we are excited for and give y'all some book recs based on Taylor Swift songs.
And remember,
We're glad you're here because it's faded.